Hey guys and girls, how you going? Mark Hummer here, of course. Here we are today. We're talking about cameras again, as you'd expect, and I had a particular theme in mind today, and that was to basically give my feelings and thoughts on the new Z9 camera coming out very soon. It'll come out sometime this year, 2021, probably just in time for the Olympics, which makes a lot of sense. Now, Nikon are going to put together a magnificent camera, and it has some brilliant features, and it's very exciting. Will I particularly be wanting to get one? Well, probably not, because it is a niche market camera and it's a very specific design. For me personally, the main issue with it that I have, that I feel that it's not of value for me, is the 8K video footage. Now, what am I meaning here? Well, here it is. I'm at the moment shooting with 4K right now, and I think it's exceptional high quality. In fact, most people I know, they have 4K cameras. Even their smartphones will shoot in 4K for the most part. And most monitors and TVs that are out on the market are all 4K monitors. That's the latest tech and is what is the industry standard, if you like, now. Now, 8K, I know nobody with an 8K TV. No, I don't have one either. Would I like one as a monitor for my TV, my computer system? Yeah, probably would. Probably help with the photo editing in high detail. But as far as shooting video at 8K and then having to produce that video, this is something I don't think is all that it's cracked up to be. See, I well remember the time when we evolved from the 1080 being the standard, and then we switched over to 4K, and that was a big leap. I mean, it is 4 times the resolution, so that helps a lot. Get a much crisper, cleaner image. And I use 4K now, and I think it's fantastic. It was worth the investment, but the investment was huge. You know, the changing of all my computer equipment, for example, cost a lot of money, multiple thousands. Then you had to buy the monitor that was 4K to benefit from that. So recording something at 4K and then viewing it at 1080 was a complete waste of time. So you had to upgrade every aspect of your computer. That also meant all the cabling had to be upgraded. So I couldn't use HDMI anymore, not efficiently, for 4K at 60 frames per second, which is an option that I have and have had for many years. I found that I had to also get a monitor that could do 4K at 60, which was actually pretty hard to find. There's only a few on the market that could cope with that. Then I had to find the cabling that was suitable. So I had to find DisplayPort 1.2, which could cope with that. But if we're now talking about 8K video footage, that's not going to be good enough. I'm going to need to upscale again. And that's a massive investment financially. So all the things like your graphics cards and your processors and your hard drive space, even the cabling, for example, even if I had an 8K monitor, it's no use just using HDMI to think you're going to transfer and work with those files. You're going to need a DisplayPort, and then it's going to have to be a 1.4 or greater. And it's just all the expense, and the refitting is huge. And for the advantage, well, there is an advantage. Yes, 8K is a lot higher resolution. It's 4 times that of 4K, technically. But in visual advantage, it's really only about twice as good. Because there's only so much you can perceive with the eye. This is a big debate back in the days of 1080 to 4K. Do you actually notice a difference? Well, with that, actually, you do. Because 1080 was actually pretty soft, even at its best. Even with Blu-ray, you can still see some pixelization. But with 4K, and it's performed and executed well, it's actually quite brilliant and amazing. So I don't think that the 4K is anyway not worth it. It is definitely worth the investment. 8K may very well be worth an investment, but I'm thinking it's like 3 to 5 years away before it becomes any sort of a industry standard and actually usable for the home market. So if you're a professional cinematographer, is that a great option? Yeah, sure it is. It's future-proofing. You get the best quality you possibly can. I'm all for it if you're a big budget cinematographer. But for the domestic market or the casual professional doing the odd wedding video, etc., you're just wasting your money and time. And I think the processing power required, the delays in uploading. I mean, let's face it, where do you upload it to? Who do you give it to? Who has 8K anyway available at home? Almost nobody. So the files are relatively useless and certainly of no financial gain to you, because no one's going to want to buy them at 8K because they can't view them to their benefit. And secondly, even if you could give them these files and they were excited about it, what are they going to do? Upload it on YouTube at 8K? Well, that's not going to happen, is it? That's a long way away in the future. So I think it's a bit of it's a dream. It's a lovely idea. It's sort of a nice idea to think that, I can shoot in this sort of resolution. But the only practical application for it that I can perceive is for cropping in. So let's say, for example, you want to shoot a wide scene and you shoot it at 8K and you want to do some like headshots or come in tight on the subject. Well, then you have the option of cropping into 8K and it still looks great 4K quality. So I can see how that could be almost a use, but I found a way to work around that anyway that makes the 8K obsolete anyway. And let me give an example. I have two lenses here in the front of me. I have one camera is being used to film, so I couldn't put the actual body on the second lens. But to illustrating purposes, this is something I've practically done just recently. In the last 3 to 6 months, I've been practicing this regular, and I found this does the same effect. So I have two cameras, as most people who are serious about their photography are. You're going to have a backup of some sort, even if they're not the same. But let's say you've got the Z system, you've got to say, for example, a Z6 and a Z7, and you want to do some videography at 4K. Well, of course, both of them are capable of that. And in fact, the new series cameras can do 4K at 60 even, which is very useful for high action, high bouncy around movement. But for example, let's say you have this one here, which is a 24 to 70 on your Z6. And you have a second camera, whether it be Z6 or Z7, it's not important, and you say maybe have your 70 to 200 or something equivalent. Well, what you can do is the wider angle can take the full scene at 4K. And then what you can do is use your second camera at 4K and have a longer focal length. You could use a prime if you have that too. You could have, say, a 50mm prime here, 85mm prime, and that gives you the two focal lengths. So rather than thinking I need to crop in and you're compromising the quality, you're shooting 4K at full frame, cropped into that shot, doing the headshots or tighter angles. And you just film them simultaneously on either two tripods, or you couple them up into one super tripod. But either way, you've got two lots of footage at the same time, which is redundancy. It's like a backup thing, which is really good. Particularly, let's say, if for whatever reason they get out of the frame, they come back in, it doesn't acquire focus quickly. You can always use the second one that was acquiring focus as use that footage instead. So it gives you that flexibility. But you get one wide angle shot in 4K good quality, and you get a tight angle shot at 4K good quality, and you don't really need the 8K for the purpose of cropping in, if that's what you were thinking you were going to do with it. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there, that's what I've been doing. I can show you some little video samples. I'll put them in the little corner of the screen there, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But it does function very well if you have the luxuries of two decent cameras. Now some may say, oh yeah, but my phone, I've got this new Apple whatever phone or Samsung, and it does 8K video on your phone. Well, let me just reassure you that I used my phone for 4K on several occasions, and it functions reasonably well. But it is nothing of the quality of the proper mirrorless cameras, full frames. The 4K you get from that is substantially better than the phone's quality. I don't care what situation you're in or what lighting, it's always going to be better in the professional camera. I can illustrate it like this. If you were to have very good in-focus, well-lit 1080, that is what the 4K looks like on your phone. It does not look like the 4K that you get in your cameras. So just so sometimes technically things say 8K, or they say 4K, or they say whatever they say, but the actual practical application, when you view it on a decent sized monitor at any reasonable proximity, is quite a different effect altogether. So let's not pretend. Sometimes the stats, they're not lying, but it's just not getting the fulfillment of what you think you're going to get. So let's just not kid ourselves, that's what I'm saying. So the application of 8K, I think, is a bit of a waste of money, time and energy currently. 3 to 5 years, it'll be amazing. But right now, you'll be spending so much money. You're paying a premium price for every upgrade you need to accomplish to get that processing, that it's just simply no value in it for you. And as I mentioned, things like hard drives and cables, the monitors, these are things you don't really think about initially. You think about, I'll get the camera that'll do it. Well, that's only less than half of the expenses. Now you can triple that expense on all your monitors, computer upgrades, cabling, hard drives, and etc. And then even when you get all this together, just think about the file sizes you have to deal with. Think about how slow everything processes. Think about uploading it. Where do you upload 8K video to? Really nowhere that's practical. I mean, as it is, high quality 4K is slow enough to upload to YouTube. Sometimes I have to leave my video files up overnight, and it takes them 8 hours just to upload to YouTube. And then of course it takes YouTube then another 2 days maybe to process it in-house to get it to the 4K quality. Imagine how long it's going to take with 8K. It's going to be absolutely miserable at the moment. So anyway, we'll move on from that subject. I think I've flogged that horse to death enough as it is. But the 4K I think is brilliant. 4K at 60 is fantastic. It's a great option. Even many cameras today are doing 4K at 120 frames per second. Obviously that's mostly usable for your slow-mo, etc., which is a great option. And I think the 4K is the way to go. Be satisfied with that. Don't get intoxicated with the dream of 8K. I think it's just too far away for the time being now. So I have been talking to you about recently about the idea of using a power pack to battery power your cameras, so you have infinite long distance charging ability rather than having multiple batteries with you and or a battery pack, which is quite cumbersome. I have found this sort of a device really practical. So I just wanted to iterate that yes, I have used it now on several occasions. I show you some footage where I was using it recently with a dance video where I could plug one of my cameras in to this battery pack and therefore have indefinite amount of power and not even think about it. Like this thing is, all I'm worrying about is pressing record again every half an hour to make sure that it started off fresh again and making sure I have enough hard drive space on the memory cards. But as far as the actual battery power, that wasn't a consideration. After an hour and a half of video shooting, the bars on the gauge on the camera, the battery gauge, hadn't moved at all. So in other words, it was just infinite. I could have kept going all day. So this is actually a really good solution if you're doing a lot of video work in the day. And I found that having something as simple as a little bum bag or minor little camera bag to place it in, hook it onto your tripod, etc., or even around your waist and carry it around with you was a terrific option. So I'm still giving this a thumbs up, and I'm just telling you in practical application, I've used it now several times, and it is an absolute goer and works really well. Having a little device like this as well, I'll just illustrate this. I'll show you it up as close as I can. Having the cable high quality, but some of them come with these little Velcro attachments. You can buy them, or you can just get a little bit of Velcro. But having that you can strap up to here, your brace, I'm using an L bracket of course, and that gives you the option to secure it so it can't pull out. That's also a little bit of extra reassurance, and I think a pretty good idea too. Make sure the thing doesn't come apart on you when you're not paying attention. And something else I'd like to talk to you about today was what I was using to film with. See, I'm using the Nikon Z7 II to film on, and I'm using a 50mm prime. 50mm prime set at f1.8, so it's quite a shallow depth of field. It's relatively close to me, wouldn't be more than about 2 meters away. So yeah, you should be getting a reasonably interesting shallow depth of field. But what I'm keep glancing at the phone for, I'm checking out the autofocus, because as you know, we've had an upgrade on the autofocus recently, new firmware upgrade, and it does have a very reasonable eye detect system now on the Nikon cameras. So I've been checking out to see how it works. So what I've done is I've utilized the large human eye detect feature. Now you can have the full screen effect where it'll pick you up anywhere in the screen, but I'm using actually the box. It just hovers around the head. I'm looking at the framing now on the phone. It frames about like this to me, and that'll pick up my eyes anywhere in that box. The reason I've chosen that feature is because I don't want it focusing on anything else. So I'm giving it absolute 100% chance of finding an eye and staying with it. The other thing is, of course, I have lenses on the table here, and that could be a distraction, because a lens, after all, does look like an eyeball, isn't it? It's what they're designed over. So maybe it would mistake them for an eye or something like that. So I thought I'd make sure that there was definitely focusing within that perimeter. And from what I'm observing over the last half an hour is it's absolutely finding the eye perfectly, and I can just see it twitching from one eye to the other eye, but never actually going off the eyes. Depends on where I turn my head, which eye decides to choose to focus on. But I'm actually quite pleased with its performance. In fact, when I was doing the dance video only 2 weeks ago, I was trying that very same feature on the young ladies, and they were very high in activity. They're jumping around, dancing, moving left and right on the stage. And I found that even with the close in, I was using the 70 to 200, at around 105 mils, roughly around that range, to do headshots. And even with their high motion and activity, it was finding their eye and holding onto it really well. Did it lose it? Well, sometimes it lost it for a few split seconds, but only because they left the frame. They actually moved right out of the camera, then came back. It took a second to find the eye again. But when they were in that frame, as long as they were in the frame of the camera, it was finding the eye. And I was actually very impressed with how this eye detect is working. I have no other camera to compare it to. So can I say, oh, is it as good as the latest Canon or the Sony or whatever else? Well, I can't say, because I just can't compare. But what I can say is the footage I am seeing is really good, and I'm very pleased with it. You can be the judge of that for yourself now. As I'm sitting here and it's finding my eye, and I think at f1.8, should be doing a pretty interesting effect. I've got a filter on the lens because I've got a lot of bright lights on, so I'm using my circular polarizer right now just to cut down the glare, because you get a bit of reflective glare off these shiny surfaces, and I thought anything I can do to minimize that's an advantage. Also helps lower the light level. So there you go. So you let me know what you think about the look of it and see if you think it's working as well as I'm pretty confident it is. Now obviously I'm not moving around as much, but the results should still be quite interesting. So please comment below and let me know if you think I should be shooting at 1.8, or if you think that going back to the usual 2.8 that I had it on is actually a more pleasing look for you as a viewer. But I thought I'd try it out and just give it a bit of a test run while I was making the video. Oh yeah, and just one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is one of my most recent videos. I was speaking about a 4-way speed light adapter. So I had the 4 speed lights on it with little bubble diffusions, and I was saying what a cool feature I thought that would be. And I have used it on multiple occasions. I've used it for both with that dance video I was talking about. I used that for taking the photos that day, which I'll put some samples up and you'll see how it worked. Secondly, I've also used it for macro photography. So whether I was doing a group of 4 at that particular time and I wanted some breadth of light and diffusion, or whether I was doing a tiny little creature like a little grasshopper and I wanted to condense these lights in, which you can do with that adapter. Yes, it has the broad option, but you can also narrow beam down those 4 speed lights into a little funnel and like a spotlight effect, and that was brilliant for the macro photography. So I'll show you some slides up of that and how the results went. But I was very impressed with having that much light and that much control, whether you wanted it broad and soft or you wanted it narrow and confined, and not have to make a big change of your rig. It was just some minor adjustments with buttons. That was really cool and convenient, and it did work really well. When it came to the photos, I didn't use any other diffusion than those 4 bubbles that I was showing you. They were enough diffusion because it was a broad area. Had I wanted to do some just headshots, well then I would have put maybe the 120 centimeter softbox up to diffuse everything and make it a lovely soft light for an individual. But because it was a group, I wanted to get as much light in a broad area as possible. That was quick and it was very convenient to set up, and I didn't have to worry about it blocking a lot of volume and light in a small studio, nor did I have to worry about it being a big bump hazard, because these big umbrellas are great for soft light, but they take up a lot of volume in a room. So it was quite pleasant to have something that was more confined and not so taking up so much space. But its efficiency in working was absolutely fantastic, and I was really impressed with it. So I just want to let you know that I've had some practical application with it, and it succeeded and worked very well. So I give that one a thumbs up. Please consider purchasing it if it suits your needs. So really that's all I have to talk to you about today. I hope it's been some interest to you. Look, if you've ever got any suggestions for videos, things you want me to talk about, whether they be Nikon related or you just want to talk about some question of photography technique, please feel free to ask questions, because I love conversing with you online, and if I can be of any service at all, well that's 100% what I want to be doing. So I love taking the photos, but I'm quite happy just as much to talk about them. So enjoy your day all the same, and thank you for your time watching.